Welcome back to the Mega Man-like miniseries. Today we're going to make a real gameplay HUD. Right now we've been using an above layer as sort of our fake HUD right now, but we're going to actually make one out of the menu scene, and then we're going to add in our life bar onto it, and then we're also going to make the energy bar that is going to be for the weapons that you would have in this type of a game. And we're going to make that work, turn on and off according to if you have it equipped or not. And so with that said, let's get started. Right, so here we are with the current project. This is where our life bar was, and we made it to where when you lose life, it will flash and then lose the appropriate life. All right, so first things first, let's get this life bar on the menu scene. All right, so right now we've just been doing it on this above layer here, but we're going to move these objects onto the menu scene. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these objects, including this one, and delete them. And then we're going to go back to the scenes here, and under menu scene, this is where you can create your menus. And so you start off with this one, it's called menu 1. I'm just going to right click and rename it. I'm going to rename it gameplay HUD. And then we're going to click on this objects right here. And now we can start adding objects to this tab. And so I'm going to grab the life here, and I'm going to add it just like this. And this is where I was saying in the animations here, sometimes I like to upper left it right here so that the origin's right here. So then on the scene, I can come over here to the default position and I can type 10 and 10, and it will be a perfect 10 this way and 10 down, because here's the origin right here. And so we can test this out, how this will look if we go back to scenes. And on our test scene, we need to right click it, go to scene settings, and then under default menu screen, we need to add the gameplay HUD. We can also preload it. These are where you can preload menus that you would have. I'm not sure if it's needed for the default menu screen. I haven't noticed a difference whether we have it or not, but a good practice would probably be to preload it. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that we still don't see anything on this scene, but that's okay. It's still on our menu tab right here. And when we press play, we can see that it does in fact show. And when we move around, it stays right there in position. Now, menu scenes are really cool because they can maintain state across scenes, especially if you're using portals and stuff. And so if the next scene starts off with this same default gameplay HUD, and let's say that this menu object has maintained state at end of scene selected, it will maintain the state even though you've transferred scenes. So it's a really cool design how you can keep certain things the same and stuff like that. Okay, so let's get into adding the energy bar now. So in the resources here, I have imported an element MP. I guess we could call it energy, but yeah, we'll just leave it MP, that's fine. And I do need to slice it here, so 31 vertical. It's the same exact as the HP, but it's just a different color representing the boomerang color. So now in the animations tab, we can go to our HUD here. And now instead of just HUD life, it can just be the HUD in general. And we'll add animations into here. So in the animation setting, we'll add another resource. And we're going to add that MP. Click OK, and now it's added. Now, a really simple thing, now that we have this life set up, and we know it's the same frame rate, or the same frame count, I can just double paste this, or copy paste it, and I'll just say boomerang, or energy boomerang, since we'll have multiple energies here. Matter of fact, we could also do this. We could say energy, and then this one would be for the boomerang. Yeah, let's do this. And then we're going to change it to right here. And now all the frames went blue. So we don't even have to set it up. It's just we copy pasted it and it worked out good. Now, one thing I do want to name is I do want to name this HUD Energy Boomerang. And then I'll just say HUD Life. All right, so now we're getting a little more specific here. Just a little cleanup from the last video here. Okay, so now that we have the energy and we have all this set up correctly, let's make the object for it. All right, so now let's start to make the object here. I'm going to copy and paste the HUD life, and we're going to call this HUD energy. Now, this is going to keep track of the energy, and it's going to keep track of it using its life. So we're going to say that the max life is going to be 30. The current life, we can also say 30 for now anyway, but this is going to be adjusted by actually a variable in the resources. So we're going to go to the variable here, and we're going to create another variable, and we're going to call this current boomerang energy. So this variable is going to have default of 30 because you're going to start out with 30. Because once you get the weapon, you will start out with full energy of it. And so what this is doing, and actually the way I like to name is current energy boomerang, because then you would have another variable right after it, and it would be called current energy other weapon. And so I just like to keep the current energy the same, and then I'll just say what it is at the very end. So it's just a naming thing that I like to do. All right, so this is going to keep track of how much you have at any time. And then in this object here, in the life, this is going to keep it from going below 0 and going above 30. So we're going to be using this life as an easy way to keep the energy min and max in check. So let's get to programming this. We can see that we already have the setup, and we have a processing here, and we have this change HP. So we'll just keep all of this, and I'm going to expand out this processing because you're going to have multiple weapons here. So we're going to take this one, and we're going to say change energy for the boomerang. We can just expand this out a little bit. And then I'm going to give it the energy, and it's going to be the boomerang. All right, so this is going to be the energy boomerang adjustment. Processing is definitely going to be takeover motion, and setup now is actually going to be none. It's not going to take over a motion because we don't know. You'll probably start the scene with no weapon equipped, so we don't want that to happen. And actually, you don't even need a setup at all unless you wanted to. So I'm going to leave the setup, but we don't need this. We don't need this to equalize anything because you're going to start the level with no energy equipped or no weapon equipped. But we'll leave it here just in case you want to start with something. All right, and then it's going to unconditionally go to this processing in which we go to our first weapon, which is the boomerang. So let's get these a little straighter here so we can start to dig into what is going to go into these. So let's get the check in, and it's going to be similar. It's going to be if this animation frame does not equal, except for instead of the player's HP, we're actually going to say this object's HP, which again, this object is the energy. So this is the energy's value, basically, is the HP. The other check that we need to add is we need to add a switch variable, and we need to make sure that we know that this is, in fact, weapon 1. So we would have to go to the common variables, and we would have to say that this current weapon does, in fact, equal negative or equal 1. Which, if we go back to resources and check, 1 is the boomerang, 0 is the basic, and then 2 is going to be the other weapon. Which I'm just going to add this. I'm going to show you how to do another weapon, basically, without actually adding the weapon yet. So hopefully it'll just make sense how you could expand with this system. Okay, so back in the objects here, we will just make sure that this is 1, and now we know that this is, in fact, the boomerang. So from here, we can actually re-equal the animation frame to equal, instead of the player, to equal this object's HP. And that will set the frame that we're actually on. We don't need to do a filter effect for the energy. I found that we don't really need the filter effect for when the energy is going down and up. And then we'll just unconditionally go back to processing. So this system right now, it's working as far as it's taking this object's HP value right here, and it is matching it to the animation frame of the boomerang energy. But how do we get this value, this energy current, to be this object's HP value? And that is going to be done in our HUD switcher. So I'm going to drag down our HUD switcher right here, and we're going to go into its action here. We're actually going to get rid of these animations. We don't need these animations anymore. We're actually going to, and we might add them later if I do icons or something, but for right now, this is just going to be a switcher for us. And how we're going to do that is, let's see here. We don't need to move object anymore. We do need to keep the current weapon. We don't need to apply the filters anymore either, because this is not a tangible image anymore. This is just logic. And so we got the current weapon 0, so that means that we're just the basic selected. And then we have current weapon 1, that means our boomerang selected. And we'll just start with this for now. So with the basic, we don't have any energy amount, so we don't need to do anything with the energy's HP. But when we switch to the boomerang, we need to swap out whatever this current HP value is. So say you're on the other weapon that had a value of 10. We need to be able to, when we switch to boomerang, switch to whatever that variable is, and say it's 30, switch to 30. And so in the switcher here, we're going to go into the boomerang, and we're going to also say that not this objects, but the HUD energies HP is going to equal the common variable energy boomerang, because that is where we're keeping the value of the energy boomerang. And then we're going to hit OK. And so now when we switch to here, we're going to equalize the HUD, this HUD energy HP, to equal the energy boomerang. And we actually want to do that before we switch the common or the current weapon variable. And the reason why is because we want that HP to equal this amount and then switch and then let it adjust its animation frame. So let's actually go into here and let's try it. Let's go to our menu scene, go to objects here, and we're going to add our weapon switcher. Now it doesn't matter where you put it. Sometimes I'll just put them all in here so that I know that all my invisible objects will be inside this little red box thing, so that if I do need to find one, I can find one. Find it pretty easy. And so now we can test this out. So if we play test here, I think I start in this state. Oh, we do need to add the energy, my bad. Okay, so let's add the energy. And to place it, I'm just going to go to change to energy here. And I'm going to place it 10 in, just like the life is in. And then I'm going to place it 15, probably not enough, 20. Yeah, let's go 20. So this is another reason why left, right, or upper left placement is really nice. You can just really gauge it with these XY positions. And then I'm just going to make sure that I switch it to default value. And now we'll play. And you can see that the bar is not there yet. And then when I switch to boomerang, it pops up. And then we don't have a way to actually reduce the amount. So let's do that first and test that. So let's go to the player gun. And then in the fire boomerang, this is where we're also going to minus the amount of energy that it requires. So again, we're going to go to the energy. And we're going to grab its HP, because remember, we're basing it all off the HP. And then we're going to minus, and we'll just say 2. So we'll say that each boomerang costs 2 HP. And so we'll hit OK right here. And we can do it last, that's fine. And now we'll just try it out, make sure that this works. So we cast a boomerang, and it is going to minus 2. Right, so this edit is to more fully complete this process. Right now we're minusing 2 of the HP of the energy, which is our energy, but we're actually not checking to see if we at least have 2. And so in order to fire not only do we have to make sure that for this boomerang, for instance, that there's less than 3 instances on the scene, but we also need to make sure that we have enough energy. So we're going to grab the energy and we're going to say the HP has to be greater than whatever the energy cost is, which for this boomerang in this case is 2. So we have to make sure that we're greater than 2 energy in order to be able to cast this boomerang. Now, the one thing is if I, for instance, right now, the way this is working, if I switch back to none, first off, it doesn't go away. But then if I switch back to boomerang, it's going to go back to 30 because we're not updating the current energy for the boomerang. And so let's do that first. In our energy here, when we change the boomerang energy, not only are we going to adjust the animation frame, but we also are going to adjust the common boomerang, the current boomerang, and we're going to make it equal this object's HP. So now we have the full loop of updating everything that is associated with this energy. And it's a really clean way of doing this because now we can keep our current energy updated, but then we can base all of our attacks off the HP variable, which again will not go below 0 and will not go above the max HP value, which is really handy. Okay, and then the last thing that we need to add before we test again is we need to add another state, and this is just going to be no weapon selected. So there's no weapon selected on this one. And when we do not have a weapon, we don't want anything to show. And we actually don't need to update anything in this. We can actually just leave it alone, and all we want to do is update the image. That's all we want to do. And so to get into this no weapon state, it's when the animation frame, nope, we can get rid of this one. It is purely when the current weapon equals 0. And that's going to be what happens. And then we're going to have the out. It's just going to unconditionally go out. And we might have to actually have a switch because what's going to happen here is it's going to say, or you know what? Actually, we could do this. So let's take, so instead of this, instead of unconditionally going out, let's take this and let's make it the link out as well. But instead of equals 0, it cannot equal 0. So anytime the value goes above or below, which it wouldn't, if it goes above 0 for a different weapon selected, then it's going to come out of the state and go into the processing state that it needs to. And that way it just stays here. It's not constantly looping, or we don't have to create another variable to keep it in check. So now we can test this out, and we have our basic, which will not take any energy. When we switch to our boomerang, we can see that it switches to 30 because that's what it was set to. When we throw, we can -2 away. And then when we switch back to our basic setting, it disappears and we go back. And then we can switch again to boomerang. And we can see that it actually didn't work for some reason. Let's see what happened here. It's probably still stuck maybe. Let's see. So we're in the, let's go to menu scene object, or menu scene. This is good, I guess, to go over. So in the objects thing, you have a normal scene tab or option where you can just see all the objects in the normal scene or the menu scene. Okay, so here's our HUD live. It's in processing. That's good. Here's our switcher. It's in boomerang selected. Our HUD energy is in processing. Okay, so let's check what happened here. So the animation frame did not equal the HP. Okay, this is actually very good to go over. So we actually do need something in this no weapon. We actually need to change this animation frame. So we'll say this animation frame, and we're going to equal it to -1, which I believe pauses. Let me double check this. So variable animation frame, I'm very bad at remembering what this one does. So 1 will play the animation, 2 pauses it. Okay, so that's what we want. We want 2 then. So we're going to pause it. So number 2. And so that way, when we're in the no weapon state, we are setting the animation frame to a variable that it can never be equal to this player's HP, because the HP can't go below 0. And that way, when we switch back to the boomerang, this value is true right off the bat. Because see, what was happening is we were switching. Well, the animation frame and the HP were still retaining, and so it never would switch back. So that was something that I forgot to add, was just this animation frame needs to re-equal below anything that it could be. So now if we test this, so we shoot, we go to our boomerang, we fire, we go back to basic, we shoot, and now when we switch, it should come back, and it came back with the updated value. Okay, so this is basically it. Now the last thing I do want to show you is just if you were setting up another weapon. So in this variable, let's say that other weapon energy, let's say that you had 15. So we'll just pretend that you've been in this level, you've already used 15 energy of this other weapon. The boomerang will still be full, and then the current weapon, we've got this figured out. Now let's go to animations, go to the HUD, energy. Let's copy paste this boomerang, and we'll just say other weapon. There's just going to be a test other weapon. If I can spell right. And what we're going to do, just to make this a quick test, is we're going to grab these and we're just going to change the color. So we'll just make it a nice red. So this will be like a red attack or something. And then we're going to go to object, and I'm going to copy paste this change energy, and we're going to say change energy other weapon. And we'll just link this up real quick. So the link is going to be, again, if the animation frame does not equal the HP, and if the current weapon equals 2 in this case. All right, so I'll go ahead and make the link back be unconditional. And then in this change other weapon here, we're going to, again, change the animation frame to equal this HP. And then we're going to change the other weapon to re-equalize to the HP. All right, and so now let's play test this. Actually, the last thing we need to do is we need to add a other weapon selected. And right here, we will change it to 2. We will equalize the, let's see here, what was this? Instead of making the energy HP equal the boomerang, we're going to make it equal the other weapon. Then the last thing that we need to add is our left and rights here. So we'll have this one to go down, and then this one to go back to the boomerang. And on this one, we will get rid of the R1 pressed. This one will get rid of the L. This one will get rid of the L. And then this one will get rid of the R. All right, so that should set us up. I think there is something I'm missing. Oh yeah, we need to change this from boomerang to the test other. So it grabs this animation instead of this one. And now we should be able to test this. Now, nothing's going to change as far as, so I can switch to my boomerang. I can use some of this, and then I can press R1 again, and then we can see that it switches to the red weapon, but you can see that it grabbed the value of 15 that was like we had been using it throughout the level. Then when we switch back to boomerang, it changes to the boomerang, but it grabs the boomerang's current energy. And then we can switch back to basic, and it goes away. So that's how you can do a energy switcher. There is one more thing to go over here, and this will be the last thing that we have to add for this to work to work perfect. So first off, let's go over what can happen here. You can't really see it in the current form, but basically we have the boomerang 30 and the other weapon 15. Let's just say that the boomerang was also 15. And let's go and let's switch to our boomerang. And now let's switch to our other weapon. So I'm going to press R1 and we will see that it did not switch. So it did not switch. And the reason why is because of this one again, where it has to, the animation frame cannot equal the HP. Well, if both of these variables are the same value for whatever reason, because and that could happen pretty easily. Say that you start using the other weapon, you use it down to 15 value, and then let's say that you switch to the boomerang, and then you use that also to 15 value, and then you switch back to other. They're going to be the same value, therefore it's not going to switch. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can actually have a variable, a self variable that is keeping track of what weapon you're in, and then you add that check on top of these other checks to make sure that you're in the same weapon. Kind of complicated. Or you can actually just go to the switcher, and we can just say that when the boomerang is selected, that we force the energy, let's see here, the HUD energy to go to the change energy boomerang. And we just force it one time. And that way it just changes, equalizes, and then boom. And then the other thing that we would do is in this one, we would say, we would force it to go to the change to the other weapon or whatever weapon you have. And that should be enough to, when we test here, we can go to our boomerang and then I can press R1 and now we go to our HUD. And we can go press L1 and go back to our boomerang. And then we go to our basic. We can use our boomerang, go to the new HUD, or sorry, the other weapon. It switches fine, and it goes back. So you can see just that little simple thing that we added will take care of itself, that execute object action. Now, the one thing that is very important is the only reason we can execute object action in the menu scene is because both of these objects are on the menu scene. We cannot execute object action from normal scenes into menu scenes, and we cannot execute out object action from menu scenes into normal scenes. We also cannot use the condition specified object action, which this one checks if a object is in a certain action or not in a certain action. We also cannot use those in between menu scenes and normal scenes as well. So just a couple things to keep in track. So with this HUD system that we got going though, we can use execute object action all day, and it seems to be the simplest way to solve that problem. That's a wrap on making an energy system. You can easily see now how you could just keep adding weapons, and this whole thing will keep track. Your HP will be capped min max very easily, and all you got to worry about is keeping your current energy, or just making new current energy variables for your following weapons. If there's any questions, you can drop comments below, visit the Steam forums or the Discord. We'll get you figured out. With that, we'll see you at the next video.